Next, from Chicago, we talked to John Cruickshank, the Consul-General of Canada in Chicago, about trade between Canada and Illinois. We also talk about the effects of President Trump's tariffs on trade and the possibility for renegotiations of NAFTA. This runs about 25 minutes.
And so I'd like to start off with an overview, because part of what we're trying to do is really add context to what's going on with the tariffs and with NAFTA, and kind of bring it specifically to Illinois so that the audience understands what's going on and everything.
Sure.
And so in 2016, Illinois put out figures of their trade with Canada, specifically with Illinois, and they put down that the biggest exports are petroleum, machinery, transportation equipment, and I was wondering, how has that changed since 2016?
I don't think it has changed profoundly since 2016. Remember, we've been at this trade business about 200 years, you know, since the dawn of the state, and long before the creation of a formal entity, Canada. So you know, the trade patterns are fixed, at least in part, by geography and by resources and by people. What's changed really, you know, is over the last 25 years, its trade has been operating under the North American Free Trade Agreement. And what's happened as a result of those sort of guarantees that people can move goods without tariff, and have all sorts of other guarantees about their rights in trading and buying and selling, is that people have been able to create ways of really being efficient in how they create products for consumers. And you know, economists say that the North American market is the most efficient market in the world, which means that we get the best quality goods at the lowest possible price. Also means we're able to then have more competitive products for trade around the world. So it's been great for us in creating those supply chains in the way that we have, and that's probably the principal way that you've seen change in the Illinois and Canadian markets over the last quarter century. But you know, the big issues never go away, and the big issues are people and geography, and you know, they'll stay with us no matter what the politicians do.
And so how exactly would you say, you're saying big issues are people and geography, how exactly would you say they're issues?
Well, I mean, just in the sense that we have peoples on both sides of the border who have determined that they will trade together. They will work on a kind of continental vision of how they can maximize the relationship that really starts not as an economic relationship, but as one that's based in friendship and in history and in a sense of continuity together. And we've simply built on that, and we've built this economic structure, which has been great for both of us. It's been great for the state of Illinois, and it's been great for Canadians.
And so could you give us a little bit of an overview of how NAFTA created those supply chains and made that efficiency happen?
Well, I mean, the principal thing is, with NAFTA is that it brought tariffs in all three countries down to, in most cases, zero or practically zero. Now, of course, before NAFTA, we had a free trade agreement between the United States and Canada, so that process had already begun. But the effect of these agreements for the United States was it saw tariffs in Mexico and in Canada fall much further than those in the United States because they were already much higher. So from the very beginning, there was a special benefit to the American economy. Terms of trade improved from day one as a result of that. And as I say, what happened over the 25 years is that companies large and small moved to get products in the most efficient way possible, get inputs in the most efficient way possible. We do this enormous, billions and billions and billions of dollars of trade every day in the continent. But what's really important to keep in mind is 50% of the trade under NAFTA is company to company. Right? It's not individuals Individuals are the end product and or the end users in all this. But a lot of it is between companies themselves. So in the case of the car makers, for example, they are sending automobiles or trucks across the border sometimes 6-7 times in the process of the final completion. We know with cattle, for example, cattle are born and bred in Canada and raised, fattened, and finished in the United States. It's really typical. They go back and forth across the border. So what we've done is to the greatest extent possible, we've removed the border as an impediment to trade. It's still there for all sorts of other good cultural reasons, but we've lowered its impact in imposing problems on trade. And this is the thing. Our Prime Minister talks about, let's not thicken the border, and it's a great phrase because as the border gets thicker, it means people don't move across it as easily, and travel gets hurt. It means that goods don't move across it as quickly. And when you're moving food, or you're moving inputs for people's products on the other side of the border or the other side of the continent, then that creates costs. Those costs either get passed along to consumers, or they get eliminated through eliminating jobs. Right? So anytime that border thickens, somebody gets hurt. So an awful lot of what we're trying to do in our negotiations is to thin the border even further, because we think there's a tremendous benefit to workers and consumers on both sides of all sides of the borders as we do that. The course of the NAFTA negotiations have been absolutely fascinating because I think Canadians can say, with perfect honesty, that our desire in these negotiations is to see that everybody is better off. Because the simple truth is, and you can see it through the economic history of our two countries, when the United States does well, Canada does well. It works conversely as well. When the Canadian economy is humming, it means we buy more goods. And this is something I think a lot of people don't really recognize in the United States. Canada is by a huge margin the #1 consumer of American goods. We're the ones who are making it possible for so many American businesses to hire more workers, to maintain their businesses, to deepen their profits. And that's certainly true in Illinois. Canada is by far Illinois' most important customer. So those are things that they lead us to believe that over the longer term we're going to sort through all of the challenges of today and figure it out, because it's so much in the best interests of Americans and of Canadians. And it's really the best way for us to build the middle class and employment on both sides of the border.
And so actually you touched a little bit about on another question I have, which is they have extended the deadline of how long they think that these negotiations are actually going to last.
Right.
Is there anything that Canada is that you could speak to that Canada is feeling that is unfair in NAFTA, specifically towards Canada, like the Canadian perspectives, because I feel like we don't really get to see a lot of that in the U.S.
Yeah, we haven't got a list of complaints. Our entry into this process, requested by the administration, was enthusiastic and remains enthusiastic. We know that NAFTA needs to be updated. It's 25 years old, so there's some pretty fundamental things that need to be rethought. The draft we have now predates, in essence, the digital age. Or at least its importance for the economy. So there's a lot to do. The other thing is that I think we've all recognized in the course of the last 25 years that we can do far more than we even imagined we could then, in terms of making it easier for businesses on both sides of the border to cooperate, on making that border thinner and thinner and thinner. Some of the technology that's developed to allow that to happen is really remarkable. So all of that needs to be thought through and part of the needs to be part of the implementation of the agreement. So that's that's great, and we're gonna move forward at it. So we don't have a particular set of grievances. In any trade as large as our two countries, there are going to be irritants. There are going to be things that we really don't like what you're doing with sugar, and you don't like what we're doing with dairy, and softwood lumber. It happens, right? And often the source of that is one side or the other simply has a different way of thinking about the development of that product or how it fits with everything else that they have in their their portfolio of goods, and it really just requires a lot of explanation, back and forth, the rationale why things are operating in the way that they are. So I think in the circumstances we have, these things are always going to come up. The focus has to be not on the complaint, but on how you resolve it. What is the best way to get to the bottom of that? Always focusing on the benefits to the mutual economies, right? And as I say, what Canadians want to see out of the NAFTA renegotiations more than anything else is even further enhanced productivity, even further enhanced efficiency, so that North American goods are ever more competitive everywhere else. Because if we do that, then our middle classes are going to be stronger. We're going to have more jobs, and we're going to be able to deal with any of the the shocks that can happen as a result of all sorts of other political factors elsewhere in the world. Don't overwhelm us, So all of this, if we get it right, we build not just wealth but resiliency in our economies, and that's a really positive thing, and that's what we hope for.
And so, sort of jumping off of that, could you give me some tangible examples of what could happen if trade between Canada and, let's say, specifically Illinois, what could that possibly look like for the general population in the U.S. if trade were hurt between Canada and the U.S.?
Well, as I say, when I use the metaphor of the thickened border, anything that retards it, anything that makes us less productive, means people on both sides of the border are hurt, either through higher prices or less employment, in ways that nobody wants. So that's above all what we're trying to avoid.
And what are some policy changes that might be made that would lead to more trade between, we're looking always at, we're kind of focusing on the negative. What are some policy changes that could come out of this that might lead to more trade between Canada and the U.S., Canada and Illinois?
I think, what we're trying to do with NAFTA is a kind of, we're trying to set the structure, because it's actually business people and working people who figure those things out. If you create the opportunity for people to be, as efficient as possible, then growth is going to take care of itself. If you create the circumstances where we can be more competitive than anyone else in the world, then growth isn't going to be a problem. So this is really setting up a structure so that there's fairness, so that we can always go to a kind of a rule-based environment, knowing that there's going to be a secure way of moving into the future. So, look, I think we've already seen a tremendous amount of growth through cooperation and investments on both sides of the border in areas like water, clean technology. There's been just this tremendous explosion of growth in digital products of all sorts, and all sorts of elements that have come from that and become part of our workplaces in Illinois and in Canada. There is so much more opportunity. But it's that opportunity is not to be chosen by our governments. And I think both our governments have said very clearly, we're not trying to choose them. That's not what the negotiation is about. The negotiation is about creating a framework so that people can be creative and create great opportunities for the future.
So then, just to make sure I understand correctly, you're saying that it would be the change would be to actually give more freedom to the business people on either side, so that they can foster and continue that growth.
Well, it's really, yes, freedom in the sense that you know the trade agreements are about getting rid of the impediments to the free flow. You know, that's why the first step of the trade agreement is get rid of tariff barriers, right? And that's what we did. We dropped all those tariff barriers. The second step that's equally important is get rid of the non-tariff barriers. And there are lots of ways that trade gets restrained by various sorts of kind of local rules or local ways of doing things that you know, are incommensurate on one side of a border or another. And so, you know, we're working hard, and we've already actually agreed on some of the steps that will make that easier, especially in agriculture, for example. You know, we in both the United States and Canada, and certainly in Mexico as well, you know, we are fact-based societies, we're science-based societies, and so we are creating ever more common approaches to how we look at some of the issues around agricultural trade. That just makes it easier and easier to see that it deepens and grows. Agriculture has been, you know, the largest success of NAFTA. In most of the agricultural market, you've seen expansion, you know, up to 5 times over, which is fabulous, and shows no sign of you know, stopping. And that's then created this wonderful basis for expansion in exporting to the rest of the world at really competitive prices.
And so, actually, I want to make sure that I give you a chance of speaking a little bit about this. What are issues on the Canadian agenda in respect to U.S. and Illinois? What are you working on?
What are we working on? Well, look, I've been here for just under a year, and an awful lot of what I've worked on is on NAFTA. It's on trade, and it's typical that Consuls-General spend a lot of their time on trade, because that's a big part of what we want to do. Make sure that American corporations understand what opportunities there are for investment in Canada. Make sure that Canadians understand, you know, what potential ties there are here. We've done a lot of that. We've had some real success in this consulate at creating those relationships, and that's you know, we're very proud of that. But you know, more still has been going around and talking to people about the nature of the relationship. I think a lot of people are still shocked at the fact that the trading relationship is as deep as it is, that the economies are as linked as they are, and it's just that for us is a really important message to get out.
And so, if jumping off of that again a little bit, if let's say there are business people who are watching or anything like that, who should they contact if they want to get more involved with trading with Canada or seeing how they can expand their business?
Thank you for that opportunity. They can certainly come to me, and we have a trade office. We have a pretty elaborate organization here, and a great system and deep system in Canada to make sure that people who are interested in making investments have all of the opportunities to see what's available, and we've helped lots of folks, and so we've got you know, a real sense of how to make this work as painlessly and as profitably as possible. So.
Perfect. And this is a bit of a moot point since Mexico and Canada are exempt from the tariffs. But had the tariffs, the steel and aluminum tariffs, been applied to Canada as well, what do you think Canada's next move might have been?
Well, they haven't, and that's the most important thing. I would just kind of repeat what our foreign minister has said, which is this is a great first step, but we've got lots of work to do yet, so that there's a real understanding in the administration that tariffs on the grounds of security against Canada on steel and aluminum really don't make any sense. I mean, we are America's closest ally. We have been shoulder to shoulder in every area important for now centuries. There is no closer security relationship than Canada and the United States in the world. And so the notion that there could be some threat to America's security or integrity because of trade with Canada in steel and aluminum just doesn't really make any sense. We are so integrated in these areas as in so many others. So we're really pleased that this carve-out has been done, and we need to take the further step of making sure that it's permanent.
And so actually some people, because of the idea of steel dumping and needing to make steel in-house because of national security concerns, some people have said that having the exemption for Mexico and Canada sort of undercuts any reasoning to have these tariffs across the board. From what I'm hearing from your answer, and let me know if this is wrong, that kind of refutes what they're saying because it's specific to our relationship why we shouldn't have any steel tariffs.
Well, look, I'm here to speak for Canada. Others can figure the other stuff out, but certainly from the perspective of Canada-U.S., no, doesn't make any sense. Our relationship is so close. At the military level, and that is, after all, one of the key issues of security. There is our systems operate together in ways that are really extraordinary. You can take out an American group and put in a Canadian group, and they operate in just precisely the same way, with the same kind of weaponry, with the same kind of training. And we've done that because we work together protecting the continent. And we work together in NORAD, and we work together in NATO, and we train together, and we have over the last century and a bit fought together a lot to make the world better and to make the world safer, and certainly to make the United States and Canada safer. And we've achieved that, and this is no time to forget it.
Absolutely. And so this one's actually a little bit off topic, so feel free not to answer. This is specific to some stories that I'm working on separately on Syrian refugees, and with Canada taking thousands of Syrian refugees, something that you hear from the American public is the fear that how do we keep our national security, especially with the idea of having that free movement between Canada and the U.S. Like, how would that affect us, and if that makes people feel uncomfortable, what would you say to that?
Heard that before, but what I would say is the free movement that we're seeking is not untrammeled movement across the border. We in fact have a very, very secure border. And it is as secure as it is because of an enormous amount of cooperation between our security forces on both sides. So we've worked very, very hard at that, and I think both sides have lots of reason to be proud. So no, we don't have that fear, and we have no reason to believe that anybody else should. That's something that I think both sides should be very proud of.
Is there anything that I didn't ask a question about, or that I didn't cover that you think I should have, or that you'd like to say?
No, I mean, Sim, I just want to reiterate. This is. We tend in the news business, and I spent 40 years in it, to focus on crisis, and that's appropriate for the daily hit. But the reality is, over the longer term, the relationship between Canada and the United States is not one of crisis. It's one of extraordinary cooperation, and it will continue to be. We will resolve the issues that are in front of us, and we'll resolve them in a way that is beneficial on both sides of the border. And I can say that with some confidence because we've been doing that for a couple of centuries.